Episode 2. Dare to Accept the Challenge. After looking around for a moment longer, Xavier realized that the books in the library were just like the moon's reflection in the water. They were visible but intangible, impossible to retrieve from the shelves. He lost interest and retracted his consciousness from his mind. Time to eat lunch. After lunch, I'll find some way to coax a few more students in. Gazing out the window, the sun slowly rose overhead. It seemed to be approaching noon. Out of the 18 students who passed by his classroom in the morning, he had only managed to rope in one of them. His acceptance rate was way too low. He couldn't continue at this pace in the afternoon. Regardless of the situation, he had transcended to this place. If he was unable to dupe even those who came from the ancient era, how could he proudly claim that he was from a world in the digital age? Stretching his back, he walked out of his classroom and headed for the cafeteria. Just like the high schools in his previous life, Englewood Academy's cafeteria was rather large. Its size was sufficient to house more than 10,000 students at once. In good spirits after successfully hoodwinking a student into his class, Xavier ordered a few additional side dishes and sat by the corner to enjoy his meal. Isn't that Teacher Adam? While Xavier was in the midst of enjoying his meal, a disdainful voice sounded. Lifting his head, he saw a young man gazing at him with a big smile. Yet, his face didn't carry the slightest hint of warmth, and his smile felt fake. Teacher Adam? Xavier recognized him. Adam's full name was Adam Hart, and he entered the academy at the same time as Xavier. He was fond of inflating his ego by comparing his achievements with others. The previous host of Xavier's body couldn't tolerate insults, and Adam had played a huge role in the reason why he drank himself to death. How's your recruitment going? Judging by how you're in the mood to eat, you seem to be doing well. Look, these are the students that I've just recruited. He grandly gestured to the students behind him. There's a total of 12 of them. I'm here to have a meal with them before bringing them to their dormitories. Adam gazed at Xavier with a look of superiority. No doubt about it, he was here to boast and inflate his ego. There wasn't any grudge between Xavier and him. But as they both had joined the academy at around the same time, it was hard to avoid comparisons between them. Thus, Adam often made use of Xavier to boost his self-esteem. The students standing behind him stared at Xavier curiously. As new students, they seemed to be fascinated by everything around them. Students, allow me to introduce him to you all. This is Teacher Xavier, a celebrity in our academy. He's the very first teacher to score a 0 in the teacher qualification examination ever since the inception of our academy. He's a man who created history. 0 marks in the teacher qualification examination? I heard of him when I was on the way here. Apparently the cultivation of a student under him went berserk, and that student nearly became a cripple. Yeah, I heard that as well. Quite a few people warned me against choosing him as a teacher. I think I'd worry not only about my cultivation not advancing, but also dying under his teaching. I didn't expect him to have such a kind face. Upon hearing Adam's introduction, a commotion broke out among the students. The score for the teacher qualification examination was based on an evaluation of various aspects of a teacher, including the examination results of their students. As long as a teacher had at least one student under them, they would earn some points. Obtaining 0 marks was truly making history. Are you done with your introduction yet? Facing the snide remarks of Adam, Xavier remained composed. The one who scored a 0 was the previous Xavier, so what did it have to do with him? However, even though he wasn't angry, Adam stepping over others to boost his ego had gotten on his nerves. He waved his hands impatiently and said, "Why don't you scram? Don't interrupt my meal." Adam thought that Xavier would cower in embarrassment when his history was revealed. But not only did Xavier remain nonchalant, he even stood up for himself. Adam's face darkened. He flung his hand backward, and, putting on the authoritative airs of a teacher, he chastised. To break the lowest record of the Academy by scoring 0 points in the teacher qualification examination. Don't you feel ashamed at all? Ashamed? Why should I feel ashamed? You've already said it yourself. I have broken a record, and because of that, all the freshmen know who I am. But what about you? Xavier raised his hand and pointed towards the students behind Adam's back. Do they know how much you scored in the examination? Before arriving at the Academy, have they heard of your name? If it wasn't for your persistence, even going to the extent of treating them to food, do you really think they would have acknowledged you as their teacher? Despite being a figure whom no one knows about, you still have the nerve to brag to me? What in the world are you so proud of? If anyone else were to have scored 0 in their teacher qualification examination, they would have lowered their heads in fear of disgracing themselves. Yet Xavier did the opposite. He was gleeful about the matter, almost taking pride in it. His skin really is way too thick, Adam thought to himself angrily. How can he remain so proud of himself? Dumbstruck, the students behind him stared at one another blankly. Shame? Thick-skinned? What a joke. In the era that Xavier had lived in order to become famous, people went to the extent of doing all kinds of shameful deeds. They did everything that one could think of, be it nude photos or fake news, without the slightest sense of shame. Yes, he had scored 0 for his teacher qualification examination, but it was nothing in comparison to the deeds of those people. Adam's face flushed scarlet. The main responsibility of a teacher is to guide the students. I wouldn't squabble with you over this today. Let's cross blows after you find yourself a student. Then we'll see whose student is more skilled. He turned around and walked away. At this point, the conversation between an older man and a young woman sounded behind him. That teacher really isn't so bad. His personality is good as well. The young woman sounded dazed, with a slight hint of hesitation in her voice. The older man responded with a tinge of frustration in his tone. Just listen to me on this matter. The young master entrusted me to bring you to August Jenkins before we came here. Yet you refused to heed my words and shook me off. On top of that, you even chose him out of all possible teachers. That teacher is not as bad as you said. He is a good person, and he even examined my constitution. He said that if I were to train properly, I can become the top of the cohort. You still hope to reach the top of the cohort under him? If you were to really study under him, it'll be a miracle if your cultivation doesn't go berserk. Do you even know who he is? He is the most useless teacher in the entire academy. He scored a 0 in the previous teacher qualification examination. I think you should hurry up and withdraw from his tutelage. Otherwise, if the young master hears of this, he'll kill me. The older man sounded desperate. Big brother! Upon hearing the older man bring up the young master, the young woman seemed to be intimidated. Adam, who had been listening in on their conversation, perked up. He stopped and turned around, smiling at Xavier. Xavier, could this young lady be the student who you just recruited? Well, looks like things aren't going well for you after all. It seems like she intends to withdraw from your tutelage. Since teachers could pick their own students, then naturally students were also allowed to pick their own teachers. If a student felt that their teacher couldn't bring out their potential, they could return the identity token back to the teacher. Adam's loud voice attracted quite a bit of attention. The young woman and older man turned their attention over as well. The old man's gaze fell on Xavier. Is he the teacher that you just acknowledged? Yes, She nodded. The older man immediately stood up and walked over to Xavier.
Xavier, the young mistress of our family has decided to withdraw from your tutelage.
But the young woman hadn't expected the old man to act so instantly. With a flushed expression, she hurried over and faced Xavier with an apologetic look.
Teacher,
She was the student Xavier had just accepted, Rose Ellison. Given how much effort Xavier had given into coaxing her, how could he allow her to withdraw? Assuming the tone of a disappointed elder, he lectured her.
Rose, you know that I don't accept students easily. It's only because of fate that I took you in. Why do you want to give up on such a good opportunity? Do you know how many people desire to become my student, only to be refused in the end? What the hell?
Hearing his words, the surrounding students, especially those who were aware of his background, listened closely.
Xavier, can you at least have some sense of shame? What do you mean there are so many people desiring to be your students? Are you delusional? It is clear that you are the one who is unable to recruit any students.
I don't intend to... Rose stammered, but before she could finish her words, she was interrupted by the older man, her Uncle Kemp.
Xavier, our family's second young mistress has officially decided to withdraw from your tutelage. I'll be relying on you to conduct the withdrawal procedures.
Withdraw? Xavier's eyelids twitched. You better reconsider your options. Withdrawing from a teacher's tutelage will leave a student with a bad reputation, and it'll be unlikely for other teachers to accept her. Are you going to ruin your young mistress's future just because of your stubbornness? Are you sure that you can take responsibility for that? Uncle Kemp froze. Students could withdraw from a teacher's tutelage, but this act was considered an insult to the teacher. Besides, if students could withdraw from a teacher's tutelage once, they wouldn't hesitate to do it again. Usually, students with such a bad track record wouldn't be accepted by other teachers. After all, who would be willing to accept a student who has no regard for the prestige of teachers? Not to mention, accepting such a student would mean insulting the other teacher. The teachers in this school were colleagues, and it wasn't wise for one to offend their peer over a single student. If a student couldn't find themselves a teacher in the academy, their future would be ruined. Knowing that Xavier's words were true, Uncle Kemp's determination wavered. In the end, he was just a servant. He wouldn't be able to bear the consequence if the second young mistress's future were to be implicated over a lapse in his judgment. Xavier sensed this wavering, so he pushed on. Rest easy. Your family's second young mistress has good talent. I'll teach her well so that she can score well in the examinations. Before Xavier could finish his thoughts, Adam stepped forward and spread his arms grandly. Hold it right there. Who says that no teacher will be unwilling to accept her? Young lady, if you were to withdraw from the tutelage of this teacher here, I'll immediately accept you as my student. Adam, what do you mean by this? What do I mean by this? Don't you think that it'll be a pity if such a good bud goes to waste? I'm only offering her a place if she were to withdraw from your tutelage. After all, the students came to the academy to study. It's natural for them to choose the best teacher to guide them, and not someone who scored a 0 in the teacher qualification examinations. Adam chuckled gleefully. Xavier's complexion darkened. Poaching students from me publicly? Do you think I won't report this matter to the education department? This was no longer a bicker. While the academy encouraged teachers to choose their own students, they did not pardon the poaching of another teacher's students.
Not only would such actions sour the relationship between teachers, but they could also affect the culture of the school. Poaching students? Quit exaggerating. Adam laughed. How about this? Why don't we have a fair competition? We'll offer our pointers to the student and allow her to choose by herself. Do you, accept the challenge? In his previous state, he could only barely make sense of the various cultivation realms. If it was offering pointers on one's cultivation, then even the previous host could smoke through the matter. But the current Xavier? It would be impossible for him to go up against Adam. He'd surely lose. Adam chuckled, flinging his sleeves. What is it? Are you afraid to accept the challenge? It's clearly written in the rules that teachers can compete with one another to allow a student to make a better choice. Therefore, it's not considered poaching. What are we going to offer pointers on? Xavier knew that if he turned down the challenge, the only student he had recruited was going to get away. Pressured, Xavier gritted his teeth. There were many aspects a teacher could offer pointers to their students on. Their cultivation, battle techniques, flaws in their movements. On this aspect, most teachers had their own field of specialization. How about this? Since they're all new students who just arrived today, why don't we have them execute a punching routine and offer them pointers on the flaws in their execution? After which, we'll have them try out their punching routine once more on the spot, and whoever student improves to a greater extent wins. What do you think? Normally, Adam wouldn't be confident to go up against any of the other teachers, but as he was facing the one whose performance was at the bare bottom, he was more than confident. Xavier hesitated. What's this now? You don't accept the challenge? What happened? You were bragging so proudly a while ago that you would refuse so many students. If you possess true abilities, prove it. Don't hinder the future of this young lady with your ineptitude. Adam taunted. Xavier eventually nodded. All right then. The worst thing that could happen to one was death anyway. At most, it would end in his loss. If he didn't accept the duel now, the student he just recruited would definitely withdraw from his class. If so, he would be truly forced into a corner. If he found himself at a loss, he would just have to make up something random on the spot. In any case, he was thick-skinned, so a little embarrassment meant nothing at all. Hearing of the challenge, a large group of students who had been eating their meals came crowding over. As most of them had heard of the teacher who scored a 0 in the teacher qualification examination, they were quite curious to see how the matter would turn out. Teacher Adam and Teacher Xavier are competing with one another. You mean Xavier, who scored a 0 in the teacher qualification examination? That's right. He dares to compete against other teachers? Are you for real? Is he just asking to be embarrassed? Seeing the huge crowd gathering, Adam felt even more motivated to perform. He opened his hands widely with a confident smile. Going by the standard rules, you'll offer pointers to my student, while I offer pointers to yours. To ensure fairness, such competition disallowed teachers from offering pointers to their students to avoid the suspicion of cheating. Usually, they would exchange students for the battle. Adam beckoned Rose over. Young lady, come here and display your punching routine. Strike on the stone pillar with your full strength. She blushed and looked over at Xavier nervously. Seeing that he wasn't angry, she stepped forward. Placing her hands by her side, a deep and powerful aura shrouded her body. The immense force of her punch caused the wind to whistle. It would have been hard to imagine that this shy young woman
could wield such immense strength behind her punches had one not witnessed it personally. Her stance was stable and forceful. With a single glance, one could tell that she had diligently built up a solid foundation. Before long, she completed her punching routine. After seeing the punching routine, Xavier felt hopeless. Even with the memories from the previous host, he wasn't able to discern any flaws at all. No wonder the previous host had scored a 0 in his teacher qualification examination. His eye for discernment was way too weak.
Good. Now, strike the rock pillar with your full strength.
Recognizing her talent, Adam nodded in satisfaction. A rock pillar stood not too far away from him. This rock pillar possessed the ability to gauge the strength of the blows landing on it. Such rock pillars were stationed all around the school so that students could utilize them whenever they needed to gain a deeper understanding of their own strength. Rose walked over to the pillar shyly. Gathering the might she had accrued from her punching routine, she sent a forceful punch right onto the rock pillar. The pillar staggered before her, and the digits floated into appearance. 117. Adam nodded in approval.
117 pounds, eh? The strength of your punch isn't half bad.
Given that Rose was a freshman who had yet to be guided by any teacher, and that she was a female, it was indeed impressive for her to carry such weight behind her punch. He continued, offering his feedback.
Your punching routine is vigorous and forceful. However, one flaw that I notice with your punching routine is that it's a little too short. If you can increase the speed of your rotation of your lower limb, the might of your punches will increase significantly. If I'm not mistaken, your legs have probably incurred injuries of some sort?
Clearly, Adam's eye for discernment was indeed superior to Xavier's. In that short moment, he was able to tell that the crux to Rose's punching routine was her lower limbs, and from there, he deduced that she might have been injured.
Yes,
Rose nodded in agitation.
Due to your injury, you're hesitant to exert pressure on your lower limbs. Since that's the case, allow me to impart you with a solution for this. Don't worry, it won't worsen your leg injuries.
Adam went on to explain a method of diverting one's strength thoroughly. Rose responded,
"Let me give it a try."
To be able to achieve such strength despite her injuries, Rose's superior ability of comprehension played a huge part. It didn't take too long for her to understand the concepts behind Adam's solution. She stepped up to the rock pillar once more and clenched her fist. A surge of strength gushed through her entire body, as though a mighty dragon had possessed her. 139. Through momentary tutoring, the weight behind Rose's punch increased by 22 pounds.
Given that her strength has increased by 22 pounds, that's an improvement of 20%. I'm done with my guidance. It's your turn.
Adam smiled. Raising a student's strength by 20% in a single session of guidance was a rather impressive feat.
Teacher Xavier!
A student stepped forward from behind Adam and readied himself to execute his punching routine. Xavier raised his hand.
Hold it right there. Why? Do you intend to go against your words?
Adam snickered.
Go against my words? What a joke. Do you really think I'd go back on my promise?
Xavier spoke forcefully, but on the inside, he was panicking. As a transcender from another world who had just arrived in this one, how could he possibly offer any pointers to a student? If they wanted to learn how to download films from the internet for free, he was an expert. But given how he didn't know anything about martial arts, what was he supposed to do?
I only think that,
With the crowd staring intently at him, Xavier swallowed his pride and fumbled around for an excuse to free himself from this situation.
Given that he's, your student, There's a possibility that he might hold back after my guidance. If that's the case, won't I lose indignantly? I'll use my full strength. At the very least, I still have that little bit of credibility. The doubted student gritted his teeth in displeasure, offended by Xavier's words. Since the student had already uttered such words, Xavier knew that he would only be mocked if he continued pursuing the matter. Thus, he turned to make another matter in hopes of finding a breakthrough. Fine. I'll believe in the credibility of the student. However, our duel isn't fair. Unfair? What is unfair? Adam asked. Rose is my student, and even if I were to win, I would earn nothing at all. On the other hand, if I were to lose, she would become your student. How can this competition be considered fair then? Since we are wagering, the bets on both sides should be equal. In this gamble, only I stand to lose. Do you really think that's fair? Xavier said. Adam was tongue-tied. Phrasing it in this way, the challenge did indeed seem unfair. This bet was no different from fraud. While Xavier had his own student on the line, Adam wasn't susceptible to any losses at all. After a moment of contemplation, Adam declared as he gestured at the student in front of him, All right then, if I were to lose, Jesse Farley over here will become your student. Teacher? Jesse hadn't expected Adam to make such a decision. Jesse was flabbergasted, and a look of anxiety appeared on his face. He would rather die than acknowledge a teacher who scored 0 in the teacher qualification examinations. Don't worry, I won't lose. Adam looked at him confidently. Reassured by Adam's words, Jesse walked over and, regardless of whether Xavier was looking or not, started executing his punching routine. This... Xavier started to spout a few more words to convince Jesse to give up. But, to his dismay, he had immediately executed his punching routine, not giving Xavier any chance to speak at all. Xavier felt defeated. He couldn't even recognize the punching routine the student was displaying, so how could he find a flaw in it? It was impossible for him to offer any pointer at all. Flaw? What flaw is there in this punching routine? He asked himself. Beads of perspiration formed on his forehead as he was overcome with anxiety. If he were to fail, being embarrassed was the least of his concerns. More importantly, the student that he took so much trouble to hoodwink would be gone, and he would be expelled from the academy. Just when he thought all was lost, the divine library in his mind jolted, and the deep rumbling of thunder echoed in his ears. Within the library in his mind, 4 words appeared on the top of the bookshelves. Imperfections identified in the library. A book suddenly appeared on a bookshelf, falling right before Xavier. What's this? Xavier's heart stopped for a moment. He instinctively lowered his head to glance at the book in his hands. There were 2 words on the cover of the book. Jesse Farley. Casually flipping to the first page, a bunch of words appeared before him. Jesse Farley originates from the Farley family of Detroit City. A student of Englewood Academy, fighter. 1-level class yieldling. Cultivation technique, Lotus Breakthrough Might technique. Battle techniques, Soaring Fists, minor accomplishment. Dragon Fist, major accomplishment. Flaws, 12 aspects. Number 1, he uses too much strength for his feints. Number 2, Number 3, Number 4, Number 12. Although his left arm is much stronger, his punching routine is more suited for the right hand. Thus, he is unable to exert his full strength. This? Browsing through the contents of the book, Xavier felt as though he might have been losing his mind.
Was this for real? Just as he was in dire need to find Jesse Farley's flaws, the Library of Heaven's Path compiled a book that listed his weaknesses. If what was written was real, then the gift package he received as a transcender was truly impressive. Everyone in the world had their own flaws, and the same applied to battle techniques and cultivation techniques. Perfection was a concept that didn't exist in this world. To be able to perceive the flaws of a person and compile them into a book. The capability of this library was about to break through the heavens. Just as Xavier was immersed in the changes within the mind's library, Jesse had already completed his punching routine. With a resounding tremor, the digits floated into appearance on the rock pillar. 136. The weight behind Jesse's punch was 136 pounds. Adam smiled. Xavier, Jesse has finished his demonstration. Why don't you, offer him some pointers? The crowd who had been watching the commotion immediately turned their gazes to Xavier. They wanted to see how the only teacher to ever score a 0 in the teacher qualification examination would fare. Episode 4.